I want to see if you can share the history of Kalo and our connection as Hawaiians to Kalo. I know it's been said before, and I've tried to explain it here on the podcast before. I've had other guys try to explain it. But out of all the volunteer days and people that I've spoken with, your version of it is always my favorite.
Wow.
So I've been dreaming of this day, because we talked about you coming on all the time. We wanted to do it at the Lo'i at some point, but it's hard with the weather. But I've been waiting for you to come on this podcast and just give, like when people come to the volunteer day, you talk with everybody, you give them the history. I love that. That's like my favorite part.
Okay.
So if you could just give the little ho'oku ʻāina experience right here on the podcast.
Okay, I'll try my best. So we share an expression that we learned from a dear friend of ours, Kaipo'i Kelling, who's a kumu olelo as well. And the expression goes, nani ke kalo. And from what we've learned, nani ke kalo is an expression that Uncle Eddie Ka'anana from Miloli'i used a lot. And at one point, he was very influential with up at UH Manoa and teaching many young people olelo, and as well as Ike Hawaii. And I know that he was working a lot with Uncle Eric Enos out in Makaha at Ka'ala Farms, teaching many things out there as well. And so it was an utterance that he used, nani ke kalo, beautiful the kalo, right? And it's such a beautiful expression. And Uncle Eddie was actually a contemporary of my grandmother, and they knew each other. Mm-hmm. And so although I was in his presence a few times, I feel at least somewhat of a pilina to him through my grandmother. And an expression, nani ke kalo, beautiful the kalo, right? Kalo is so beautiful. And kalo was the main staple food. I mean, it was the food eaten every day, right? And when we think of today, what's the food we eat? Most people would say probably rice on an everyday basis, or maybe, if maybe not rice, maybe bread would probably be the kind of the staple food. Well, for our people here, it was kalo, and Hawaiians preferred then to eat it in the form of poi. Which I think needs no explanation, right? Mm-hmm. But I really use the, I like to use this comparison. Like when we go to a luau, right, today, we get the big rectangle plate, right? We all know, right? We walk through the line and we get all these heaps of food on our plate. And and incidentally, most of it is actually not Hawaiian food, but we call it Hawaiian food. And then if we're lucky, we get a small bowl of poi, right? That's probably
a little small plastic container.
Yeah, a little 4 ounce, maybe 2 ounce, whatever, and it's probably watered down a little bit. Whereas in the old days, it was the complete opposite. So you had an umeke of poi that sat in the middle of the eating space, right? And everything else was really an accompaniment to the eating of the poi. The poi was the ai. The ai and poi, that expression was used interchangeably. So maybe you had a little dried fish, and maybe in this case, dried fish is not necessarily, dried aku, like how, guys like to make it. Maybe it was just some dried manini hanging in the house. You broke off a little piece and, 2 scoops poi. Maybe you had a little limu that was gathered that morning, and a little limu, 2 scoops poi. Maybe some uala was still, in the umu, in the imu, and then somebody grabbed some and you broke off a little bit of uala. 2 scoops poi. And if you like eating poi the way we do, where it's nice and thick, before you know it, ma'ana. I mean, you're satiated because the poi will fill you up and you'll be satisfied. And so, the eating of kalo, the eating of poi was so much so, and while there were regions there were less kalo grown, it was the preferred starch and staple. Regions like in South Kohala, in those areas would probably be uala, but in most areas it was probably kalo. And so so much so that I would argue that if you are of Hawaiian ancestry, chances are you would not be here were it not for the kalo. Many of us know the story of Haloa, and it's I won't get into there's many versions, but the story goes, there was a god and a goddess, Wakea and Ho'ohokukulani, and they came together, and she became hapai, or pregnant, and unfortunately the baby was stillborn, And they buried that child, and from where that child was buried sprung forth the first kalo plant. And they named that kalo plant Haloa Nakalau Kapalili. So ha in this case being the ha, the stem of the kalo, if I can use my arm as an example. Loa meaning long or large, like Mauna Loa, the large mountain. Lau being the leaf, and kapalili being to quiver. So Haloa Nakalau Kapalili, the long-stemmed leaf that quivers, generally in the wind. Yeah. And so I've thought long and hard about, wow, why would one name some, why would one give it that kind of name? And I think, for the Po'ekahiko, and not too many generations ago, everybody took part in the growing of kalo. So everybody knew what it took, the effort that it took to grow kalo, right? I mean, you're going to sweat, you're going to get hot, it's going to be itchy. Sometimes you're going to be raining and it's cold. But I'll tell first graders, at your age, you would have known how to grow kalo. And it takes about a year to grow. And there's stages that you want to be, that you're going to have to do things a little differently. And then they would know how to harvest it and cook it and clean it and prepare it to be eaten. So when the work was done and you were maybe sitting outside the area that you steward pretty much on a daily basis, and you're looking and gazing up upon the lo'i fields, and you see the leaves, kapalili in the wind, It's a great feeling of contentment and satisfaction, knowing that the kalo is growing well, and there will be food to feed oneself and one's family. So anyway, the goddess becomes Hapai again, and this time she gives birth to, successfully to the first Kanaka, to the first human being. And they name that baby, that child, Haloa, in honor of their elder sibling, the elder sibling, Haloa Nakalau Kapalili. And what happens is something very beautiful, is the younger sibling helps to steward and care for the elder sibling. And the elder sibling reciprocates that care in the form of sustenance. So what develops is this give and receive reciprocal relationship between the Kanaka Hawaii and kalo. So back to the expression, nani ke kalo, beautiful the kalo, so beautiful. For me, I can just gaze, and there's so many different varieties, and they all have their own characteristics. And just as a plant itself, it is to me, it's nani. But when we understand the depth of what kalo represents, it's so much more. And so we like to use that expression because for us, we share that the expectation is for anyone who comes to our ʻāina, they should carry themselves when in the presence of kalo with great respect. And so that's the expectations. And so we just lay that down. And so, I've had to share that lesson and be very firm with, say, some of my former students or students in that vein who maybe might use words that, swear words a lot and or maybe, the conversations we have are the appropriate conversations. What's the ano that we bring when we come to other place? And the whole goal ultimately is that we will not only carry ourselves respectfully while at Kapalai, which is where our location is in Maunawili, but that will become a part of who they are as an individual. So that's the expression we like to use, and going back to kalo as the foundation that can help all of us to live in that manner.
Yeah, so beautiful. Nani komo olelo as well. Oh. That's a beautiful story. The cool thing is, there's two things that I wanted to say. I didn't make the connection of Hawaiian and Malagasy because in Madagascar, rice is the main dish. So they eat so much rice because it's it's easy carbs. It fills them up, and they grow a lot of rice over there. And for the Hawaiian culture, it was poi. You said that some people would say like mea ai, food, or ai, like let's go eat. They're kind of already referring to poi. So you could so hold on to that. And then in Malagasy, sakafu is food, or misakafu is to eat food. In the language of Malagasy, they would just say minambari, which mihinana is to eat, vari is rice. So when they said let's eat, they would just say minam vari. Let's eat rice. But they're just talking about food.
Food in
because
general.
it's already implied that there is rice there. So that's kind of the connection. I never I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Which is like they're in the same, kind of
Yeah.
Austronesian family. So okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
The other one is it's so cool to think that a single stalk, this with one ha, you can feed generations.
Yeah.
A single some of the kalo growing over there, they could have been around for hundreds, thousands of years.
Yeah.
And it's so cool that, like you said, that has a reciprocity of this one single plant can feed my generation, the next generation, the next generation, and we all partake in that single thing. That's just so cool for me to think about.
And that it takes hands to plant it,
Yeah.
and it takes hands to harvest it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, kind of in theory, it's kind of like that. All those many hands were touching almost like the same plant.
Yeah, I can see a super cool visualization.
Yeah.
Somebody needs to make a picture of all the generations just touching that. That's so cool.
It is.
Yeah.
It's powerful when you think about it.
Very
like that.
powerful. Yeah, right on.